Hello and welcome back to the RiftGuides WildRift video. As I've promised you, here we have the OP builds for the OP picks, and this is not the only video. There will be more videos about this. And I'm planning on making this a frequent concept or a frequent format, so you have more of this, more frequently, more benefits, more reason to just watch the videos, get more interesting builds, and maybe just take a look at Patreon as well, because all of these builds will be posted there earlier than you see them in the videos. So let's start with the first build. We have Nautilus as a support champion. You can also play him in a jungle department, even in top lane and mid lane, but for this one we'll talk about the support role. You start with a relic shield allowing you to just take down the waves as fast as possible, and you will rush Heartsteel. Heartsteel in the support role is absolutely busted and should definitely pick it up most of the time when you play tanky champions. For your core boot items, you'll most of the time choose between plated steel caps and mercs, and afterwards it really depends on what type of damage you're facing. If you're facing magic damage compositions, you'll definitely go Abyssal Mask for infinite mana supply, as well as adding even more damage to the mix. If the enemy team doesn't have any magic damage, you can just go straight for Dawn Shroud, which is going to make you a lot tankier. Other than this, if your AD carry is snowballing brutally, you can also think about going an earlier Protector's Vow or a Zeke's Convergence. For your last items, you will then pick up either Amaranth Twin Guard or anything else you need. But now we need to talk about the different boot enchantments, and here I'll walk you through them. First off, we have the typical Veil enchant, which is very good into all-in champions that want to go for your AD carry, who's the primary carrier. If the enemy team has a lot of crowns or Edge of Knights, you'll go for Protobelt to proc the crown before you go for an all-in. If the enemy team doesn't feature any of this, or you just need straight up more tankiness, you go for the Stoneblade enchantment. Stoneblade in combination with Heartsteel is absolutely broken, and it's very difficult for you to even die. As for your runes, you go with Glacial Augment because it procs on your auto attack, Courage of the Colossus because it also procs on your auto attack, Second Wind because it's the best in slot rune for most melee supports in the game, and then you go for Perseverance if the enemy team has CC, and other than this, just go for Overgrowth. For the other rune, you will obviously go for Hex Flash because your entire playstyle is about Hex Flashing around, punishing people, and do yourself a favor, please do not start with your first ability, it is an absolute grief. Rather start with your second ability and utilize your flash and Hex Flash to get laning leads. Other than this, feel free to just check this one out. The next champion on this list is going to be a Lucian build, and here you have multiple choices when it comes to just building this champion. First up, you start with Longsword into Gluttonous Grease. This one is pretty much normal. Gluttonous Grease have Omnivamp, which grants you healing from magical damage and physical damage, because this build is going to offer you a lot of damage in both physical and the magical department. But for the first item you can make a decision. You can either rush Infinity Edge, but then you're kind of gambling, or you go for a BF Sword, like the component of the Infinity Edge with 40 AD, and then build into a Solari Charge Blade. That way there's less RNG involved and you might feel a little bit better and more consistent on this. However, you can also just straight up rush IE, there's not much in terms of losing here. After this, you go for Magnetic Blaster, and then you have assembled all the magic damage items you want to, and then you need to choose when you look at the enemy team's composition. Do they have any type of healing and superb tankiness, or can you just burst them? Go for Mortal Reminder into Bloodthirster. You'll overcap on crit, but that doesn't really matter because you want the benefits of the item itself. Other than this, you could also debate going Terminus into Black Cleaver if you really want more armor pen, but that's something you really don't need in many games. For enchantments, most of the time since you're playing AD carry, you go for QSS, but in some cases, for example if the enemy team has a Z, you'll just better go for Stasis. As for summoner spells, Flash and Exhaust, and for your runes, you have Press the Attack because it's the best in slot rune for Lucian, especially if you think about how his gameplay functions and how he uses auto attack resets as well as multi-hits to just proc this rune and apply more adaptive damage as well as true damage. For the other runes, you have Brutal, Giant Slayer, and the Omnivamp rune Bloodline, and the secret here in the second part is going to go for Sudden Impact, granting you an even more powerful early game exchange by just granting you 13 free armor pen. You can also play this build in the mid lane, there's no much difference there, but just keep in mind Lucian is not an easy champion to play, so yeah, enjoy yourself. For our next champion, we have Aurelion Sol, and here we'll start with an easy build. We start with an Amplifying Tomb into instant boots of mana. You will need them to actually have enough mana to spam your first ability. Otherwise, your life will be absolutely awful, so yeah, keep that in mind. Your very first item is going to be Riley's Crystal Scepter, because you really want the slow, which makes it barely impossible for the enemy team to escape you if they are chasing down. You have your second ability, as well as your first ability is Continuous Breathing, and therefore constant slow to the enemy with a lot of extra damage, because all of you know what happens if the Aurelion Sol spits fire into your face for an extended period of time, you will just die. For your second item, we go for Riftmaker for extra added sustain and extra damage on top, and then we go for Rabadon's Death Cap. Now we come into the territory of different items that we can basically choose from game to game. First up, we have Crown of the Shattered Queen that provides us with extra safety. For our last item, we will then go for Liandry's Torment, or in some cases we can even skip Crown if we really don't need it and go for Rise and Focus. For the enchantments, most of the time you will go with Stasis, and for your summoner spells, there are plenty of things to choose from, but most of the time you'll simply run with Flash and Exhaust, and as for your rune page, most of the time you're going to play with Arcane Comet, Bone Plating, Nullifying Orb, and Overgrowth because you want the extra added tankiness. For your last rune, you can either choose between Giant Slayer or Gathering Storm depending on the enemy team. Oh yeah, and if the enemy team has a Pike, and you know the Pike, feel free to take Hex Flash to avoid the certain death of his combo every single time. Next up we have a champion that recently got nerfed, but don't you worry, it's not going to do anything to the power of Viego. We start with a longsword, immediately rush at Trinity Force, and then we go for defensive boots. Don't let yourself get baited by going for Gluttonous Grease, you really want defensive boots, otherwise you just go sky way too fast. Next up we go for the Solari Charge Blade, because here's a little secret. As you traverse the map and you use spells, you will stack up your passive. On Solari Charge Blade, you'll get up to 3 stacks of this, and your passive after hitting a champion is a multi-hit, which applies on hit effects, and therefore you can instantly multi-proc Solari Charge Blade on enemies with this combo. Now, once you've done this, you will then go for Infinity Edge to empower the crits even more and reduce the RNG of the crit involved. After this, you then decide if you want other crit items. In this build, we are going for Bloodthirst and a Mortal Reminder to get these 100% crit, but you can also debate other items if you truly want to. You can dip into more Bruiser itemization, you can dip into a more On-It itemization, you can basically choose whatever you want with Viego, your champion does enough damage as it is. As for your boot enchants, you'll go for QSS most of the time, but you can also debate going Stasis. Flash and Smite are typical choices, and Conqueror is the best rune choice you can go for. You instantly proc it within not even a second on a full engage, and then you go for Brutal because it adds even more damage to your early game powerhouse. Then you go for Giant Slayer, Bloodline, and for your last rune you can choose whatever you see fit, but in this case I'll be going for Overgrowth because I want some extra added HP to my champion for absolutely free. Now for our last pick, how about some good old tank Yasuo with an extra dash of crit mixed into the build. So first off we start with the Ruby Crystal, the most powerful thing we can even possibly imagine. Then we go for Plated Steel Caps. For a core build, we'll go for Blade of the Rune King, making us basically an absolute Thanos for any tanky champion going for Heartsteel. After this, it's Divine Sundra to add even more sustain to our build and even more tankiness. But now comes the real spice into play. We'll go for Bloodthirster and then we go for Infinity Edge. With these two items, we'll get 100% crit, super high damage, and we'll completely tear apart anything that comes into our way. And for our last item, we then go for Witsend or anything we need. This is a top 1 China build, it has a lot of adaptations you can make. For example, if you face a full AP team, you can go for Merc Treads into Witsend, then slap a Divine on top, and then transition into crit. For your boot enchant, most of the time you'll go for Proto Belt, but you can also go for QSS if you truly need to. For summoner spells, Flash and Ignite, and for the rune department, there are a few adaptations you can make. First off, you start with Grasp because this rune is absolutely toxic for your build since you get so much HP. Then later on, you can choose between either the Precision First tree, which is going to be Brutal, Giant Slayer, and Alacrity, because you want the extra added attack speed from Alacrity and your Blade of the Rune King to have enough attack speed with Bloodthirster to have fully capped out Q. Or you go for a full Resolve First tree. Here you have Nullifying Orb if you want to, you have Second Wind, and obviously you can go for Overgrowth or for Perseverance. And then for your last page in this instance, you would go for Perseverance or for Alacrity or Giant Slayer. And with that, we're at the end of this video. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, comment for the algorithm, and we'll see each other for more content very soon. If you liked the video, let me know in the comments below if you want more of this and more details, just let me know and we'll make it happen. Anyways, see you soon.